The air was thick with the scent of polished mahogany and old leather, a reminder of the power that radiated from these walls. Beatrix Caldwell stood at the tall window, gazing out at the world beyond. A flickering neon sign illuminated the alley below, where shadows whispered secrets. The city felt alive, a heartbeat thrumming steadily in the distance. Yet inside her chest an uneasy flutter resided. "Yadiel," she called quietly, her voice a low murmur that barely broke the stillness of the night. Yadiel emerged from the shadows at the far side of the room, his figure cloaked in an aura of authority. His piercing gaze traveled from Beatrix to the cityscape beyond. "What if it all comes crashing down?" he asked, the weight of his words holding a gravity that seemed to alter the very air around them. Beatrix turned to him, her heart racing. "You mean, what if we take this leap and it all goes wrong?" She stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking, her confidence mingling with uncertainty. "Or what if we don't?" Yadiel's brow furrowed. "You don't know what you're getting into." "Do you?" She shot back, a spark of defiance flaring within her. "You think you're the only one with secrets? What if everything you fear holds the key to our freedom?" Silence lingered, heavy with unsaid words and buried emotions. It was as if the world outside receded, leaving only the two of them bound together in a fragile moment, volatile yet electric. "Do you trust me?" Yadiel's voice softened, cracking through the tension, though his tone remained edged with the darkness that consumed him. Beatrix drew a breath, memories flooding back, the laughter shared, the arguments waged, the burgeoning bond that felt like an uncharted territory. "I don't know," she admitted, her pulse quickening with the vulnerability in her reply. "Trust is a risk, Beatrix." He stepped closer, the space between them pulsing like a living thing. "And right now, it's the only thing keeping us alive." "Yes," she replied, and something within her ignited. "But you have to promise me that you won't shut me out." She took another step forward, her eyes locked onto his, the weight of those words settling between them like a charged spark. In a heartbeat, the room crackled with a tension that ignited their very souls. Yadiel reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind Beatrix's ear, a tender gesture that held unspoken promises. "I can't bear to lose anyone else," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then don't," she said fiercely, emboldened by their connection. "I'm right here." Yadiel's response came not in words but in the intensity of his gaze. He leaned closer, and the world outside melted away entirely. They hovered on the precipice of a moment that felt destined, his breath mingling with hers, wrapping them in a cocoon of shared history and longing. "Beatrix," he said, his voice a husky caress against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. "This is madness." "Perhaps," she breathed, her heart racing, "but in this madness I find clarity." And then, in one swift motion, their lips met soft at first, but quickly igniting with an urgency that mirrored the chaos surrounding them. It was a collision of hidden desires and pent-up fears, a dance of danger and vulnerability that tasted of longing and desperation. She melted into him, as if finally discovering a solace she had searched for all her life. The kiss deepened as they fought for dominance, aware of the thin thread of hope that bound them. The crash of a nearby window echoed, breaking the moment but not the connection, breathing urgency into their embrace. As they pulled back, hearts racing, Beatrix searched Yadiel's eyes, searching for any sign of retreat. Instead, she found a fierce resolve simmering beneath the surface. "We go tomorrow," he declared, the flicker of danger igniting anew within their shared gaze. "Together," she insisted, the weight of their insanity binding them tighter. "Yes," Yadiel said, a flicker of a smile breaking through as he leaned in for another heated kiss, the world outside now filled with potential and promise. Scene 97, Fires of Desire. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with strokes of crimson and indigo as shadows lengthened across the cobblestones of the quiet neighborhood. The evening air was thick with the scent of freshly blooming jasmine, mingling with the faint echoes of laughter from a nearby ball, where patrons swirled in sequins and whispers. Yet within the small courtyard of an abandoned estate, a different kind of tension crackled like electricity. Yadiel Sinclair stood with his back to the crumbling stone wall, the very picture of a man poised between duty and desire. His brooding presence radiated an impulsive energy, but there was a flicker of unrest in his eyes, windows, to a soul grappling with secrets untold. The light from the fading sunset glinted off the royal blue fabric that enveloped his form, each fold mirroring the complexities of his heart. That's when she emerged, Beatrix Caldwell, even in her disguise, a vivid fire against the dusky backdrop. The tailored coat she wore was a bold statement against the limitations that society placed upon her, a woman on the edge of rebellion. Her short curls danced in the growing evening breeze, carrying a hint of lavender from the sachets tucked inside her coat. "Why are you hiding here, Sinclair? Awaiting some nefarious plot?" Beatrix teased, the lightness of her words punctuated by the serious glint in her eyes. "Only from the judgment of fools," he replied, a smirk ghosting his lips, but it felt hollow in the stillness. She stepped closer, the click of her boot echoing in the silence, cutting through the tension like a knife. "You project responsibility like armor, but even iron rusts." He held her gaze, something akin to admiration mixed with frustration swirling beneath the surface. "And what would you know of rust?" "I know you too well, Yadiel. Underneath that formidable exterior lies a heart trapped by its own designs." Her voice dropped, the humor replaced with an urgency that hung between them. "You come here to scold me, Caldwell?" He leaned a fraction closer, his presence imposing yet inviting. "Or to remind me of narrations that lead to ruin?" "Neither." Beatrix raised her chin defiantly. "I came to remind you of the fire that still burns. You can't extinguish it." With the space between them collapsing, Yadiel's composure wavered. The din of the ball faded as a hush draped over their enraptured moment. Each breath carried the weight of unsaid truths and a burgeoning connection that crackled in the sanctuary of dusk. "I have a darkness," he murmured, the vulnerability raw against the backdrop of their confrontation. "It'll suffocate us both. The only thing suffocating is your unwillingness to embrace this." Beatrix pressed, finger brushing his arm, as if to soothe a bruise he believed only he could feel. "You let shadows whisper your truths instead of shouting them into the light." A hesitation lingered, heavy and palpable. He took a step forward, inching closer, the air thickening with an acute awareness of each other's warmth. "Do you trust the flame, then?" "The flame shows the way," she whispered, soul laid bare. And in that flickering moment, the world around them fell away. Like dancers drawn to an unspoken rhythm, their faces drew closer, the scent of jasmine enveloping them in a heady embrace. Just as their lips nearly met, a distant shout broke through the intimacy, jarring them back to their reality. Yadiel's eyes flared, urgency overtaking him. "We have to go." But the pull was stronger than any sense of duty. "What if we stopped running?" she whispered, the daring challenge laced with vulnerability. "We can't," he said, voice rough yet tender, as their foreheads almost touched, breaths mingling like a melody barely audible over the chaos of the night. "Why not?" "Because I can't lose anyone else I care about," he rasped, the truth crackling like the fading light around them. In that moment, unspoken desires collided, a tempest brewing between heartbeats and grievances. It hung suspended, a choice that would forever alter their path, a decision laid bare amid the fires of longing. Beatrix offered a wry smile, firm yet playful. "Then let's just keep dancing." Scene 98, the tyranny of choices. The room bristled with an electricity that crackled in the air, amplified by the uncertainty that lingered between them. A flickering candle cast dancing shadows across the richly decorated walls, highlighting the tension that coiled ever tighter around Beatrix and Yadiel. "What if everything you believe about yourself is a lie?" Yadiel asked, his voice low yet resonant. He leaned against the edge of the oak desk, arms folded, a stance that both asserted his authority and mirrored the turmoil in his heart. His blue-gray eyes glimmered, reflecting vulnerability masked beneath his usual bravado. Beatrix's breath caught momentarily. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. She shifted, grasping for words that could encapsulate her swirling thoughts. "What if you're right?" she replied, her tone mixing bravado with an edge of uncertainty. "But at some point, you have to choose who you really are, don't you?" The silence that followed felt like an eternity, punctuated only by the distant murmur of life outside. Yadiel's gaze bore into her, a flame igniting within him that threatened to consume them both. "And what if I lose myself in the choices I make?" Then you must make a choice worth losing yourself for, Beatrix challenged, her piercing gaze unwavering. At that moment, the air shifted, bridged by an electric current that seemed to pull them closer. The seductive scent of sandalwood and vanilla lingered between them, a tangible tension thickening the space. In an instant, the distance separating them vanished, and the weight of their collective fears swirled with the promise of an uncharted future. "We can't keep dancing around this," he murmured, stepping forward, closing that final gap. The warmth radiating off him was hypnotic, calling to a part of Beatrix she didn't know existed. Her body responded instinctively, a flutter in her chest as she felt his presence enveloping her. "What happens when the music stops, Yadiel? What then?" she whispered, challenging the unspoken fear that pinned them to the moment. "The world will keep turning," he said, his voice thick with a longing that threatened to spill over. "But I," he paused, his breath hitching slightly, "I might not be part of it." His admission hung between them, suffused with the weight of unspoken emotions. Beatrix's heart raced, the heaviness of his secret beckoned her closer. All her thoughts of disguise and deception faded beneath the thunder of her pulse. In that charged silence, Yadiel's fingers brushed against her wrist, the brief contact sending shivers up her arm. Looking up at him, she saw a man worn by the burdens he carried, yet still, he stood there, radiating quiet strength. "Tell me what you want," he implored softly, heat gathering in his voice. Without thinking, she stepped closer, sharing his breath, the fabric of their realities entwined with that single reckless choice. "What I want," she began, and in that moment she realized it wasn't just about revealing her true self or navigating the treacherous waters of their world. It was about more than they could articulate. His fingers curled around her hand, grounding her, yet igniting a wildfire of emotions that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She could see it in his eyes, a profound sense of yearning, as palpable as the darkness outside, punctuated by the light of their shared intimacy. "I want." The words struggled to form, but somehow they were right there, just waiting for the courage to escape her lips. "Want what, Beatrix?" he pressed, a hint of urgency threading through his tone. Her heart pounded in her chest, the uncertainty of the world outside irrelevant in that throbbing moment. "I want us," she finally breathed, the truth taking shape as Yadiel stepped closer, their bodies nearly touching, the heated energy rippling between them. Yadiel inhaled sharply, his expression morphing from surprise to something deeper, more profound. The air vibrated with tension as their lips hovered for a lingering instant, both daring and hesitant. Finally, the spell broke, and in a swift, primal motion, he captured her mouth with his. The kiss ignited, a collision of desires, their breaths mingling in the warm cocoon of each other's presence. Time unraveled around them, filled with a dizzying rush, the world outside forgotten. As the kiss deepened, they moved together with a singular instinct, the walls around their hearts crumbling, leaving behind only the raw truth of the moment and that hushed promise of choices yet to be made, screen gently fading to black. Scene 99, A New Dawn. The sun stretched lazily over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the city of Gloaming Hill. The soft rustle of leaves whispered secrets among themselves, while distant church bells chimed, marking the dawning of a new day. Up on the rooftop of Yadiel Sinclair's estate, a soft breeze danced with the remnants of the night's storm, leaving behind the sweet, earthy scent of damp soil and blooming jasmine. It was an uneasy tranquility, an air of promise laced with uncertainty. Beatrix Caldwell stood with her arms crossed, staring out into the horizon, her heart a storm of its own. The rising sun illuminated her sharp features, reflecting the internal struggle etched across her brow. Every choice weighed heavy upon her, each decision shaping the contours of her reality, binding her deeper into the web of deception. Yadiel climbed the rooftop ladder and paused at the top step, taking a moment to absorb the scene. The light caught his skin, highlighting the intensity in his eyes, and he cleared his throat, breaking the silence that stretched like an invisible thread between them. "We need to talk." She turned slowly, her stance defiant yet fragile. "About what? The lies? The secrecy? Or is it about the danger hanging over our heads like a sword?" His jaw tightened, a silent argument raging within him as he approached her, deliberately maintaining distance. "We're caught in something far bigger than ourselves, Beatrix. You're not safe here. Neither are you. You think that by hiding your truths, you're protecting me?" She laughed bitterly, a sound that shattered any semblance of tranquility. "You're not a fortress. You're a dam waiting to burst, Yadiel, and I'm not going to drown alongside you." A moment passed, their breaths mingling in the cool morning air, as poignant as the fading darkness below. "You don't understand." He took another step forward, his voice low but intense. "I can't lose anyone else. Not again. Neither can I, but you keep pushing me away." Her voice softened, a note of vulnerability threading through. "Why is it so hard for you to let me help?" He looked at her, the weight of his secret hovering between them like a storm cloud. "Because the moment I let you in, I risk losing control. And if you knew the truth," his voice trailed off, fear flickering in his dark eyes. "What truth?" Beatrix stepped closer, the challenge igniting a spark of desperation within her. "That you're some invincible crime lord? That you think you can protect me by carrying this burden alone?" Yadiel flinched as if struck. "It's not just about me. There are others involved, Beatrix, my family, my business, lives at stake." Her lips parted, but the words clung stubbornly to her throat. It was raw, the tension palpable in the air, both of them teetering on the edge of something explosive. And beneath it all, the pulse of a yearning danced just out of reach. "Tell me this," she dared, inches from him now, the scent of her lilac perfume wrapping around him like a siren's call. "What happens if you don't survive this? What if it's all for nothing?" "Then we fight, together." His words were fierce, carrying an earnestness that warmed the air between them. "I don't want you to fight for me. I need you to fight alongside me." Silence hung, thick and heavy, as their gazes locked in a battle far deeper than words could convey. A lifetime of unspoken emotions simmered there, the storm outside a mere echo of what brewed between them. Yadiel extended his hand, trembling slightly, a tremor that betrayed his facade of control. "I can't promise safety, Beatrix, but I can promise that you won't face it alone." A small breath caught in her throat, the intensity of his proposal wrapping around her heart like a warm embrace. She placed her palm against his, their fingers intertwining, an electric charge igniting between them, a promise sealed in the morning light. Beatrix whispered, "Maybe we won't fall apart. Maybe we'll catch each other before we hit the ground." Their eyes searched for clarity in the dawning day, but within that shared moment lingered the weight of uncertainty. Every unspoken truth hovered above them, pressing like the sun's relentless rays. The fragility of their union danced tantalizingly close to a brink, as laughter echoed from the suite below, life continuing its relentless march. And yet all that mattered was the connection they forged amid the chaos. "Let's go back," Yadiel finally said, the edge of a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "We have a world to reclaim." Scene 100. Into the depths, the dense fog slunk around them like a mischievous specter, as Beatrix Caldwell and Yadiel Sinclair cautiously advanced through the narrow alleyways of East Hollow, the once gleaming metropolis now a breeding ground for whispers and shadows. In the distance, the thunderous beat of an underground rave pulsed against the damp walls, the muffled laughter and frenetic energy both enticing and suffocating. Beatrix adjusted her cap, a gesture almost mechanical now, as she glanced sideways at Yadiel. "Do you think they actually know what they're inviting in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, yet laced with an undercurrent of incredulity. Yadiel's brow furrowed, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the environment. "They never do they? It's always the ones with the loudest smiles who hide the darkest secrets. Just like us, Beatrix." She choked back a nervous laugh, the corner of her mouth twitching upwards against the weight of their situation. "And here I thought I was the only one carrying secrets." The tingling warmth of a subtle thrill coursed through her, but it quickly tightened into caution. "No one could know. Not now." "Everyone carries something," Yadiel replied. He stopped suddenly, turning to face her, the dim light of a flickering lantern spilling shadows across his strong features. "But some secrets can tear you apart, especially from those you care about." His honesty cracked through a carefully constructed facade, revealing the two-way street laid bare between them. Beatrix swallowed hard, the knot in her stomach twisting at the vulnerability he inadvertently displayed. "You could always—" "No," he interrupted, shaking his head almost vehemently. None of this can change what I must face. I won't let you. The tension thickened, charged with an unspoken understanding that pulsed in the air akin to the bass from afar. It uncoiled between them, begging for recognition. But just as quickly, Yadiel turned away, reasserting his stoic demeanor, and continued down the path, leaving Beatrix behind. Yadiel, she hurried to catch up, fitting in step beside him. You don't get to cut me out, not now, not when we're this deep into danger together. He stopped again, pinning her with a gaze that flickered, caught between moods, a dark storm battling against the dawn of understanding. Trust is not given freely in my world, Beatrix, he said, his voice a low rumble, weighed down with gravity. Then, let me earn it, she implored, a spark of her own intensity igniting as she took a step closer. The smog hung heavier around them, carrying the scent of desperation mingling with the earthiness of damp cobblestones. We're risking everything, standing on the precipice of this chaos. There's got to be something more than secrets lurking beneath the surface. Yadiel's lips thinned at her insistence, yet he seemed to yield slightly to her fiery challenge. He lost some of the distance between them, the intensity in his gaze softening as curiosity flared amidst their tension. What would you have me say then? That I fear what comes after me? That I fear the fallout of what I've done? I'd have you say you're not the only one afraid, she replied, a quick inhalation of determination stirring within her. You're right to protect yourself, but don't push me away. This can be more than just survival. As the words hung in the air, the atmosphere shifted, filled with a warmth that cloaked them against the cold reality lurking outside. There was something sizzling between them now, a connection that fought against the encroaching darkness. Yadiel closed the distance entirely, his breath a whisper against her ear as he leaned in. Then take the risk with me, Beatrix. Don't just stand at the edge. Dive. His warmth wrapped around her, and in the thick silence of the alley, something deep within her ignited, an ember almost forgotten. Eyes locked, they each balanced perilously on that uncertain precipice of vulnerability and desire, an unyielding pull threatening to sweep them under. But before she could reply, an echo of footsteps shattered the moment like glass underfoot. Laughter bled through the night, foregrounding the portents of danger that loomed ahead. Yadiel pivoted, his frame a wall of certainty, prepared for whatever encroached. We should move. Right? Beatrix murmured, though her heart thundered wildly, a syncopation that matched the pulse of her wish for more than mere survival. She followed Yadiel, the fog swirling around them, a harbinger of the chaos to come, but her spirit flickered brighter than the darkness that chased them. Scene 101, Embers of Desire. The flickering flames of the fireplace cast long shadows across the luxurious sitting room where the evening's opulence met the soft timber of tension. Yadiel Sinclair stood near the hearth, a glass of bourbon resting carelessly in his hand, warmth gripping his expression like a vice. As he stared into the fire, the chaotic rhythm of his heart mirrored the crackling logs. Did she not see the danger? Or was it her audacity that intrigued him so? Beatrix Caldwell stepped into the room, silhouette softened by the glow of the embers. She hesitated on the threshold, her eyes narrowing. The weight of unspoken words hung between them, velvet lined with the sweet scent of sandalwood mingling with smoke. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice low, commanding, yet laced with a hint of worry. For every moment she lingered close, the danger of exposure loomed larger, floating like an unsheathed dagger. I can't believe you thought I'd just disappear, Beatrix replied, crossing the rich carpet towards him with a purposeful stride. Yet in her bravado, her voice trembled slightly, a heartbeat too quick. You can't control everything, Yadiel. With a tense jaw and brows knitted in frustration, he turned to meet her gaze. Do you think this is a game? You're risking your life, my life, everything. I'm not afraid of your shadow anymore, she said defiantly, her chin tilting upward, though her insides quaked at the turmoil swirling in his dark eyes. Boiling tension sparked between them as he stepped closer, the faint scent of his cologne, rich and musky, enveloping her senses. Yet, there was warmth in the tempest of their disagreement, a flicker of longing beneath every sharp exchange. Then you are a fool, he shot back, his voice dropping into a deeper timbre, heavy with the weight of unsaid truths. His hand clenched around the bourbon glass until it seemed it might shatter. You think love can shelter you from the storm? I won't let you fall into my chaos. Who are you to dictate what I can handle? The sharpness of her tone belied the vulnerability threading through her pulse. She was acutely aware of how close he stood now, the air thick between them, vibrant and charged with the kind of electricity that made the mundane feel fantastical. Suddenly, Beatrix stepped back, frustration pressing against her like an unwelcome weight. I won't let you push me away just because it's easier, she added, her voice wavering slightly. She had seen that raw intensity in him before, and it both terrified and exhilarated her. Easier, he echoed, shaking his head as he took a deliberate step forward. His eyes captured hers, depths swirling with fierce protectiveness and something more raw. Hardly. It's easier for you to be the stoic crime lord, to hide behind threats and bravado, she countered, her defiance igniting a fire in his belly that felt dangerously close to desire. But what about what I want? Beatrix, he started, but she cut him off, stepping forward, daring him with her conviction. I want a life that isn't dictated by fear, she said, passion spilling from her. But you keep tossing me back into the dark every time I reach for the light. The room vibrated with the urgency of their conflict. Flames danced wildly, as if responding to the tempest of emotions swirling within them. He took another breath, the air thick and heavy. You're playing with flames, my dear. One moment of carelessness and you'll be burned. Their breaths mingled, and in an instant, the air shifted from hostility to something more visceral, electric. He ached to sweep her into his arms, wipe away the anger clouding her beauty, yet he sensed the very threads of their destinies were intertwined in ways he couldn't openly acknowledge. You really think you can control it? Beatrix challenged softly, stepping closer still. Her tone had softened, the fight yielding, revealing the crack in her armor. You can't even control your own heart. Perhaps not, he murmured, vulnerability flickering over his features as he drew within inches of her, but I'd gladly suffer the heat for you. The room sparked with unvoiced words, and then their lips met in a tempest of emotion. Trapped between desire and restraint, the world around them blurred into insignificance. The embers crackled warmly, shattering the walls they had constructed, and in that electrifying moment, they ignited a new beginning amid the chaos. Scene 102, Echoes of Betrayal. In the dim light of the laundry room, the smell of freshly ironed linen filled the air like the aroma of a forgotten home. Beatrix Caldwell stood with her sleeves rolled up, working the steam iron over a stack of starched shirts, her heart racing from the unauthorized thrill of her clandestine task disguising her womanhood in a household that could shatter her independence in a moment. The soft hiss and pop of the iron rhythmically accompanied her thoughts, a sharp contrast to the roaring storm brewing outside. By the tall, narrow window, raindrops raced each other down the glass pane, blurring the sharp edges of the world beyond, just as her own reality felt distorted. She glanced at Yadiel Sinclair, who leaned against the door jamb, a silhouette carved from moonlight and shadow. His chiseled features were tense, knuckles white where he gripped the frame. She could sense the turmoil boiling within him, an urgent need buried beneath layers of control. Are you planning to stand there all day, or do you have a single task in mind? Beatrix asked, deftly flicking the iron to the next shirt. Her voice brimmed with a playful challenge, yet tension hung in the air like static before a storm. Yadiel's response was a sardonic smile that never quite reached his eyes. Tending to the laundry seems a bit beneath a man with my responsibilities. The subtle twist of his lips conveyed both arrogance and an acknowledgement of the absurdity of his own remark. Responsibilities? Like brooding in shadowed corners? Beatrix retorted, her laugh brushing at the edges of crisp linen, brightening the oppressive atmosphere. Must be rewarding. Are you at least good at it? The air thickened with their banter, each barb that pierced the other intertwined with an unspoken yearning. Just as a sudden crack of thunder resonated, a gust of wind rattled the window panes, amplifying the burgeoning tension between them. It pulled her focus away from their playful skirmish into the heart of what lay between them: fear, desire, and the gaping chasm of lies. What would it take for you to trust me? Yadiel's voice lowered, his eyes narrowing, snapping her back like a taut string. She felt the tremor that ran through her at his question, a mix of vulnerability and defiance. "Trust is earned, Yadiel," Beatrix replied, returning her gaze to the shirts. "And with our secrets, it seems each of us is still counting the cost of the other." The tension glazed over her thoughts of their smoldering chemistry, her fragmented feelings swirling like the tempest outside, where thunder punctuated their unguarded honesty. A slow, powerful surge of rain began to tap on the roof, each drop reminding Beatrix of the looming deadline for their mission, a ticking clock darkening their future. She blinked back her emotions, unwilling to let him see the level of her fear. But the fire in his expression reflected her struggle. He was grappling with ferocity and restraint, his storm much larger than the one outside. Without thinking, she stepped closer, the distance collapsing beneath her boldness, emboldened by the charge between them. "You want trust?" Beatrix dared, measuring each word like fine silk. "Prove you're worth it." Yadiel matched her resolve, his breath even, but his stormy gaze betrayed the chaos beneath. "I can't promise clarity," he said, lowering his voice, "but I can promise I will protect you, Beatrix, with everything I have." The moment hung suspended, and in that charged space, Beatrix felt the world outside eclipse, and unexpectedly his hands found her waist, pulling her against him with an urgency that flared, igniting what they had long denied. She gasped this moment. These hands that carried so much power ignited something essential within her. With her senses sharpened, she could feel the strength coiling in his embrace, the warmth of his body, the intoxicating scent of sandalwood, and the pulse of his heartbeat echoing harmony with her own. The weight of the world, their mission, and the bitter betrayals conspired to dissolve as he leaned closer, their lips poised at the edge of a precipice. "Yadiel," she whispered, nerves quaking at the edge of their long-suppressed yearning. "Hush, just," he murmured, as if the entirety of their lives hinged on this fraction of a moment. And in that breath, the rain poured down with fervor, drowning out reason, as their lips finally met, a collision of storms creating a warmth that kindled around them. A kiss wrapped in promises, igniting desires that surged like wildflowers through dirt. Yet just as quickly, reality surged back in troubles and betrayals lurking, denying them a full embrace, the world that awaited them outside unfaltering in its cruelty. They parted, breathless, their foreheads resting together, voices lost beneath the fading sound of rain, but Yadiel's last words hung heavy in the air. "Can we even trust each other now?" In the tension, the storm within and without matched the upheaval they faced together, layer upon layer of distrust held closely in their embrace, yet warmed by a collective yearning that begged to be resolved. Scene 103, The Fragile Heart. Evening light poured through the grand windows of the Sinclair estate, illuminating the rich mahogany of the furniture and casting playful shadows against the walls. The faint scent of polished wood mingled with the sweetness of blooming jasmine from the garden outside. Yadiel Sinclair stood by the fireplace, his silhouette sharp and imposing against the flickering flames, the heat a contrasting reminder of the chill that wrapped around his thoughts. He clenched his jaw, heavy with the burden of what lay unspoken between him and the woman who had unknowingly changed everything. Across the room, Beatrix Caldwell, clad in a tailored waistcoat and breeches that concealed her true identity, leaned against the doorframe. The dress had been a mask, one that held her insecurities close, but in that moment, she felt vulnerable without it. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, louder than the crackling fire, as she traced the edges of her disguise with trembling fingers. It was a fragile shield against a world that might never accept her. "Yadiel," she began, her voice steady despite the flutter of doubt that twisted in her gut. "We need to talk about what happened in the warehouse last week." He turned slowly, his eyes piercing yet vulnerable, revealing the storm brewing beneath his stoic facade. "You know that wasn't just a job for me, Beatrix. I was risking everything." An array of emotions shimmered in her hazel gaze: fear, resolve, and something deeper. And what might that be? Control? Power? Or perhaps you're afraid of what happens when you let someone in. His breath caught, the space between them thick with unspoken truths. "You think I'm afraid?" He pushed himself off the mantelpiece, closing the distance with deliberate steps. "You have no idea what fear really is." Beatrix straightened, meeting his intensity with her own unwavering stare. "Do I not?" because I stand before you dressed as a man, hiding my heart and identity from a world that would tear me apart if they knew. Then what do you hope to accomplish, hiding behind woolen buttons? Yadiel stepped even closer, the air around them electrifying. I want to be free, Yadiel. Free to choose who I love, who I stand beside. But I can't have that unless I feel safe, she confessed, her voice softening. The walls built so carefully began to crack under the weight of her honesty. The flickering flames illuminated the tension in Yadiel's shoulders. He glanced away, momentarily lost in a memory that threatened to swallow him whole. You seek reassurance in a world I've made chaotic, he murmured. Beatrix took a daring step forward, nearly closing the space between them. Then let me in. Just this once, allow me to stand with you, not behind a facade, but as who I truly am. His resolve wavered, but instead of answering, he grasped her wrist gently, as if afraid to break her. The warmth of her skin ignited a fire deeper than the flames that burned behind him. In that moment, she felt the tension shift. A sigh of longing escaped her lips, uncharted territory laying before them. But before a word could spill forth, the door swung open sharply, and figures entered the room, their laughter slicing through the heaviness. It was a gaggle of familiar faces, friends, family, all caught in the afterglow of the bustling celebration outside. Yadiel dropped his hold, stepping back as the atmosphere combusted with the bright energy of the party, laughter dancing like firelight. Yadiel, Beatrix, it's a scandalous affair to confine yourselves in here while we dance, called Rashida, a lively friend with an infectious smile, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Let them be, Rashida. Not everyone wants to dance with the ghosts of last week, interjected Jamal, her brother, sauntering in behind her, offering a wink that injected warmth into the room. What's the matter? Afraid of a little joy? Beatrix laughed despite herself, her heart racing in the wake of her earlier confession. Maybe we're just too caught up in our art of brooding, she teased, throwing Yadiel a side glance that shimmered with unspoken promises. But Yadiel was silent, gritting his teeth, his gaze lost in the flickering shadows, trapped in the aftermath of revelation and regret. Yet in the midst of chaos, one undeniable truth lingered. To love was to step into the fire, together, no matter the consequences. Maybe brooding can wait, he finally said, his voice low but steady, as if resolving a personal vow. Tonight we dance. Revenge and redemption. The oppressive humidity hung in the air, coating the evening with an unyielding heat that made the shadows feel heavier. In the flickering candlelight of Yadiel's dimly lit study, the tension crackled like the latent storm brewing beyond the windows, the clouds lumbering with the promise of rain. Are we really going to stand here and debate ethics while there's blood on our hands? Beatrix's voice was firm, but the quaver betrayed the turmoil beneath. She shifted her weight on the balls of her feet, the scent of polished mahogany mixing with the faint haze of cigar smoke swirling about them. Yadiel leaned against his desk, the rich veneer warmed by the dusky glow. His gaze pierced through the shadows, searching hers for the courage he wondered if she possessed. You think revenge is nothing but a high horse? It's a reckoning. That family's pain is just the beginning. They deserve. Deserve? Beatrix interrupted, incredulous. Then we become like them, Yadiel. Is that what you want? Her hazel eyes sparkled with indignation, reflecting the light like shards of glass. They started this, Beatrix. They violated everything that matters to us, he replied, stepping closer, the space between them pulsing with unseen energy. Outside, thunder rumbled, a warning and a promise, all at once. Beatrix's heart raced, a pulse resounding in tandem with the storm. What matters to us? She challenged, just above a whisper. Yadiel swallowed, a glance flickering toward the window where the first raindrops dashed against the glass. His world was inches away from unraveling, and she was his anchor, but doubt loomed larger than his resolve. You understand vengeance, don't you? Better than you know, she shot back, her voice steely yet cracked with vulnerability. But what if it consumes us? In that moment, the room shuddered with unspoken histories, layer upon layer of their past wounds surfacing. Yadiel moved closer still, his breath mingling with hers, the space thick and electric. What if we channel that pain into something passionate? Beatrix whispered, nearly brushing against him now. Her resolve wavered, drawn to him like moth to flame. words trailing off into the charged silence between them. He reached out, capturing her chin gently, lifting her face to meet his, the shift in their worlds palpable. Lightning illuminated the room with fleeting brilliance, revealing the deep desire swirling between them. "There's nothing wrong with that," he murmured, his voice low and possessive, an intoxicating mix of longing and uncertainty. Beatrix could taste the air around them, dense with the scent of sandalwood and something deeply masculine, a heady concoction that stoked her inner fire. "But if we're wrong," she began, her breath hitching as he brushed a stray curl behind her ear. "Then let it be our mistake," he whispered, the gravity of his confession thick in the air. "Let it be a mistake we make together." He moved in closer, the warmth radiating from him, igniting something reckless within her. She could feel his heartbeat, a deep drum that matched her own. "When you look at me, what do you see?" Beatrix asked, her challenge mingling with a soft invitation. "Everything," he breathed, his lips almost touching hers, "and nothing at all." Lightning struck again, illuminating those flickers of uncertainty in their eyes. Beatrix found her breath shallow, entranced by the raw beauty of their connection. She leaned in further, their lips hovering, as if held in a world of fragile possibility that could shatter with the slightest whim. "Then take what's ours," she dared, her heart racing under the weight of that truth. In an instant he closed the distance, their lips colliding in a fierce storm of passion, a storm that mirrored the one raging outside. The kiss ignited with a fervor that consumed them both, the world fading into the background, leaving only the heartbeat of their desires resonating in a symphony of stolen intimacy. As the rain began to fall in earnest, drumming against the window, their connection deepened, raw and unguarded, transcending the boundaries of vengeance, unlocking a glimmer of redemption. The melding of their spirits in that moment turned the intent of revenge into something far more complex, a seductive dance of two souls entwined in the heart of a brewing tempest, lost in a desire too powerful to ignore. Scene 105, a desperate gamble. The flickering candlelight danced upon the ornate carvings of the mansion's walls, shadows playing tricks as the tension in the air thickened. Beatrix leaned into Yadiel, their usual sparring replaced by an uneasy truce. "Are you sure we can trust them?" she asked, her voice low but edged with urgency. Yadiel's gaze was unwavering, eyes dark with a mixture of fear and anticipation. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as one of his many masks slipping. "Trust is a luxury, Beatrix. We can't afford to gamble on it." The echo of his words seemed to hang in the air, unspoken consequences simmering underneath. In that moment, a heavy silence enveloped them, thick enough to chew. The weight of their identities, or the disguises they wore, foreshadowed explosive truths waiting to erupt. But what if taking that risk is the only way we escape this? Beatrix took a subtle step closer, the warmth of her body colliding with his, a crackling reminder of the tension that laced their partnership. Her fingers brushed against the edge of his suit, finery one might expect from a king, but which now felt inadequate amidst the storm brewing around them. Yadiel detected the urgency in her tone and the fire in her gaze. "I can't lose you," he said, his voice a steady whisper. The gentleness contradicted the chaos swirling in the room, both daring and fragile. Beatrix held his gaze, and for a moment the world outside disappeared, replaced by a shared understanding deeper than words. "Then let's make a desperate gamble," she offered, her voice low yet emboldened. He tilted his head, assessing her resolve. "What did you have in mind?" "I'll scout the meeting first. If it's a trap, I'll signal you." His brow furrowed. "You think you can handle that alone? If there's trouble." "I'm not asking for permission, Yadiel." The fire in her words ignited something in him, sent warmth surging through his veins, setting off his internal alarms with reckless abandon. Before he could respond, she was there, her lips brushing against his, testing the waters. He froze, a jolt of electricity crackling between them. It was an invitation unbound by fear, filled with the weight of declarations unspoken. Beatrix pulled back, their breaths mingling, her eyes sparking with mischief and mischief alone, dangerously intoxicating. "Are you prepared for the fallout?" he murmured, his voice thick with emotion as he wrapped his hand around her wrist, grounding them both in that moment. "I'd risk anything for this," she said, her eyes glimmering with defiance. The air grew heavy, and he leaned in again, their lips barely grazing, the heat pulsing between them like a roaring fire. It was tantalizing, the kind of closeness that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their resolve. The kiss began softly, teasingly, a slow exploration that blossomed into a hunger they both had pressed down for too long. Parting was as difficult as stepping into a void. The world around faded even farther away until all that existed were the two of them, drifting in a world sculpted from breath and heartbeat. But just as quickly as the moment electrified them, the reality crashed back like a wave. Yadiel pulled away slightly, eyes searching hers. "You have to promise me, Beatrix. Stay safe." She smiled, a spark of daring glinting beneath the surface, but he could hear the tension threading through her voice as she replied, "I will, but only if you promise not to follow blindly." The silence returned with a weight, the unacknowledged tension of shared fears and desires mingling. He felt the enormity of her presence swelling around him, a powerful reminder of what lay before them, not just the dangers of their undertaking, but the fragile beauty of what they just shared. With a gentle squeeze of her hand, Yadiel nodded, a silent agreement fueling their bravery. "Just be careful, love." As she opened the door to leave, the anticipation lingered like an unspoken vow, hanging heavy in the air, a promise of passion, danger, and unstoppable resolve that would either bind them or break them amidst the storm. Scene 106, Threads of Fate. The dimly lit workshop was cluttered with half-finished clocks and gears scattered about like lost thoughts. The air carried the scent of iron and oil, a stark contrast to the richly embroidered silks of grand balls Beatrix Caldwell had attended. Despite the mundane surroundings, the tension hung like a thick curtain, silencing even the faintest ticking from the imposing grandfather clock looming in the corner. Yadiel Sinclair stood over a mechanic's table, fiddling with a delicate watch. His brow furrowed and his fingers moved with precision, though his mind was miles away, adrift in a storm of anxiety that enveloped him as tightly as the dark attire he wore. His striking features were shadowed, and for once, he didn't exude his usual magnetism. "Why do you insist on burying yourself in here?" Beatrix broke the silence, her tone light, though the undercurrent of worry sharp as a razor. She reluctantly took a seat on a stool beside him, the wood creaking softly under her weight. Yadiel's hands paused, but he did not look up. "I'm crafting a gift for someone," he replied tersely, the words clipped. "For someone?" she repeated, an eyebrow raised, sparking the fire of jealousy already igniting within her chest. "That certainly narrows it down. Why hide away? Is it for a lady of the court? Or have you found a new acquaintance?" He lifted his head, finally meeting her gaze, an intensity swirling in his dark eyes. "Must you always twist my words? I'm not in the mood." "Apparently not," Beatrix shot back, frustration bleeding into her voice. "You've been anything but present lately. It feels like I've been speaking to a wall." "Then perhaps you should stop talking." His voice was low, laced with an uncharacteristic chill. The discontent between them simmered in the atmosphere, thick enough to slice through. Beatrix clenched her jaw, taking a moment to compose herself. The small workshop had seen happier days when laughter echoed and their banter had woven a tapestry of connection. Now it felt like a shroud, heavy with unspoken tensions and unresolved histories. "Yadiel," she said, softer now, but still assertive, "we have to face what's between us, not pretend it doesn't exist." He turned slightly away, a muscle tightening in his jaw. Silence filled the space, punctuated only by the ticking of clocks as if they, too, were counting down the moments of their fraught dance. The air shimmered with the weight of truths unspoken. "You think this is easy for me?" he asked, the crack in his armor revealing vulnerability. "You think I want to hide from you? Do you?" The question hung in the air, pulling at their unraveling threads of fate. "I've got a dozen men to manage, enemies plotting against me, and a heart consumed by shadows. I'm dying, Beatrix. Perhaps not in the way you're imagining, but—" His voice faltered, the words tumbling out like the clockworks he worked with daily. "What do you mean?" she cut in, her eyes widening as she leaned closer, compelled by a mix of concern and disbelief. He wouldn't meet her gaze again, instead focusing on the intricate pieces scattered before him. "It's complicated. Things are fragile." "Fragile?" she echoed incredulously. "That doesn't explain why you keep pushing me away." Because I refuse to allow this, he snapped, finally looking at her, his expression a tormented mix of anger and longing. This world, this life, I refuse to endanger you with my... The air stirred with the specter of unsaid truths. What? She interjected, her voice rising. With your what? Secrets. I'm already entangled in them, Yadiel. How much worse can it get? He stepped back, the distance cold and final. This is not a game. That's why I'm trying to protect you. But from what? Your hidden life? Your death? Her voice quivered, a fierce defiance rising. I am strong enough to stand by your side in whatever hell you've dragged me into. In that instant, soft breaths turned into ragged gasps as they closed the distance, the room charged with the raw fire of their emotions. Once again, the silence enveloped them, and for a moment, it felt like the walls could crumble under the weight of their confessions. Beatrix, he began, the rest of his thoughts losing form as his resolve melted away. She reached out, catching his hand in hers, intertwining their destinies. The world outside faded, leaving only the fierce pulse of their connection under the dim glow. Just be honest, she urged, a whisper of hope shrouded in the storm. The ticking of the clock resumed, creating a rhythm that could either unite or tear them apart. Yadiel took a deep, unsteady breath, his thoughts a chaotic whirl as he gazed into the depths of her eyes, a spark illuminating a path through their tangled fates.